Here's Navarro on the run. Navarro's going to keep it. Navarro for 6. Touchdown, Bobcats.
I can feel I had a hard time staying in my own lane.
Oh, my goodness.
Brett Murdoch, pick 6. Harvath inside the 30 to 20. Blake Harvath will score.
And Mendoza takes a big hit. He never saw it coming. Trey White got in there.
There's his man, Rucker. And nobody's going to catch him. Goodbye.
Intercepted. Tyree Skipper. Touchdown. Back. Telly again. Why not? A step forward and make it 2 for Telly.
Quarterback keeper. Showing off the speed. Steps on the gas. Untouched.
The G5 Hive. All G5 all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live, where we bring you all the G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. Guys, last week we had our first episode to kick off the 2025 college football season. We covered our conference winners, dark horses, and of course our G5 representative for the 2025 playoffs. But this week will be the first week that we get to preview games. Week 0 is upon us, baby. Woo! If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're watching us on X, give us a follow, like, or retweet. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. I am Luke. I'm joined by my co-host, Justice. All right, Justice. Well, why don't you hit our listeners with what the Swarm needs to know, our news and notes from around the league.
Well, before we get into some player news, just want to talk about some coaching news and some general news. So we saw Wyoming this past week has entered into an agreement with the Buffalo Bills aimed at increasing brand awareness and enhancing student recruitment efforts in Western New York. It includes a brand partnership that features Wyoming-themed marketing assets during Bills games, and then obviously. They're going to do a lot to kind of promote and highlight that connection there with Josh Allen being from Wyoming, being the star quarterback there for the Buffalo Bills. One scheduling note I wanted to point out this past week, we got a series between 2 G5 teams. Central Michigan and Old Dominion announced a football series, I believe, that starts in 2027. Between the two teams. So, love to see, some G5 on G5 action, some a good team in the Sun Belt versus a good team in the MAC. So that's coming here, I believe, in 2027. Nevada, some coaching news out of Nevada. Offensive line coach and run game coordinator Brian Armstrong is no longer with the program. There really wasn't any, I didn't see any reasoning why that was, but just kind of something to note for Nevada. This next bit of news is pretty big. I feel like I know some people like. I guess depends on what you like to do and what you like about college sports. Some people, especially coaches, I'm sure do not like this. But folks that bet on college sports, folks that play college fantasy football, will absolutely love this. We have 2 more G5s joining the MAC in terms of injury reports, availability reports, or whatever you want to call them. So Conference USA was announced this week that injury reports will be distributed 3 hours prior to kickoff. And then the other is the Sun Belt Conference. And that came out from Texas State head coach G.J. Kinney in his weekly press conference this week. He said injuries are due Wednesday night, and they will be reported on Thursday. And then there'll be a second report that'll be distributed prior to kickoff on Saturdays. I don't know. I know for the Sun Belt, there's availability reports, injury reports, whatever you call them, are only for conference games. I do not know if that is true or not for Conference USA. I tend to think it probably is, but I don't know that for sure. I do know for certain that the Sun Belt availability reports are only available for Sun Belt conference games.
Now, the thing that I think is kind of humorous about this Sun Belt two-step process, and these are due Wednesday, and these are due on the second wave right before kickoff. Because I don't think there's, and covering ODU, maybe you'll be able to help Justice. Like, is it an hour before, 2 hours, or is it just like, hey, here it is? Because it's like, oh, maybe I'm a high-profile player. Maybe I'm a offensive lineman, whatever it happens to be. I'm a quarterback, and I'm not on the injury report Wednesday night that gets reported Thursday, even though maybe I am. Maybe I am feeling a little bit injured. But then, that second wave that comes out right before the game, it's like, I'm a questionable. Like, I just feel like that first one, like, what kind of, like, who's enforcing that? Like,
Well,
I just feel like that one's going to be harder to do. And I feel like you could either just be like Bill Belichick at the Patriots and put everybody on there, or put everyone's going to be hurting. So I think that one's just kind of an interesting, I don't know, thing that I think people will make a big deal out of. A mountain of a molehill is kind of what's end up going to happen from that one.
the SEC does it that way. I believe their first one comes out on Thursday, and then they have another one that comes out on Saturday. Most of the ones that come out on Saturdays or before game, generally speaking, it's between 2 hours and 90 minutes before game time. I haven't heard a specific time for the Sun Belt, but to your point, Luke, like you remember, like Bill Belichick would put players like Tom Brady, for instance, on the injury report every single week, and then finally the NFL kind of cracked down on him and said, "Hey, like I'm finding you. You can't be doing this." To the best of my knowledge, there's not a single conference in college football that does anything like that. So I'm surprised. And maybe they do have fines. I don't know. Certainly haven't heard about it. And so I'm actually surprised, with the ones we've had in the past, that we haven't seen a coach like play a game like that where their starting quarterback is on the injury report every single week.
Jammed his finger. He took a snap, jammed his finger. He's on the injury report.
I'm kind of shocked that we haven't seen games like that played on a consistent basis so far. Because again, like I said, to the best of my knowledge, there is no, there's no enforcement, there's no punishment. And so why would a coach not do that? So it'll be interesting to see with Conference USA and Sun Belt joining the fray if we see any of those kind of games played in either one of those conferences. But, I feel like ESPN's probably one of the big proponents of this, right? ESPN, a big player in college football. But what did ESPN do? Like, I feel like it was in the last 12 months. Like they acquired somebody in the past 12 months. And that was a gambling company. And so it's now called, I think it was Barstool's gambling company, but now it's called ESPN Bets. And so ESPN now kind of has a vested interest in that side of things. It definitely wouldn't shock me to learn if ESPN's really the one kind of pushing all these all the college football conferences to kind of have availability reports, injury reports, if you will. All right, enough about the reports. Let's actually get into some injury reporting in terms of players that are going to miss parts of or the entire 2025 season. The first comes out of Coastal Carolina, where we learned recently that San Jose State transfer quarterback Emmett Brown will miss the 2025 season. That leaves the competition down to MJ Morris and Tad Hudson. I think in the official release from the school, there was 4 quarterbacks named. But I felt like, based on our talk, our Worker Bee series, it kind of seemed like it was really a 3-man race between Emmett Brown, MJ Morris, and Tad Hudson. So that just kind of leaves those two. I think most folks assume it's MJ Morris. To me, it kind of really depends on what offensive style they're trying to run, right? We talked about it during our worker bee series, are they going to be, a more traditional Beck offense, or is it going to be the run and shoot and the OC's name? Please forgive me, it's escaping my head, but he's a disciple. He was on the coaching staff with Mike Leach, and so it kind of depends to me which offense they're going to run. I would think which quarterback kind of suits that offense more. So that's, pay attention. I'm sure we will hear something, I don't know, the next week or so, who won that quarterback competition. Moving on to another injury, Washington State linebacker Keith Brown will miss the 2025 season. They're going to use it as a medical redshirt, and he plans to return in 2026. Moving over to UTEP, they have a trio of injuries to report. The first is tight end Cass Cheeks. Looked like he has ankle in a cast. No word if there's any kind of surgery or not. No word on how long he will be out. The other two are kind of big blows. The first is linebacker, expected to kind of be a starter and a star linebacker for them, and that's Nate Diamond. He will miss the entire 2025 season, and that's a big blow for that UTEP Miners defense because they were already kind of thin at linebacker, and so not having Nate out there, who's expected to be a starter and a key contributor, is certainly going to be a big blow. And then the other is a wide receiver who missed the majority of last season. Looks like he's still not ready, and that's Jaden Smith, expected to miss all of 2025. I don't expect that to be as big a blow, just because they played all season or the majority of last season without him. But the Nate Diamond one will certainly be a big blow for the Miners defense. And then Tulsa. This is, in my opinion, this is probably, of all the injuries we're talking about tonight, this is probably the biggest loss in terms of missing the entire season, and that's Tulsa linebacker Chris Thompson Jr. He's expected to miss at least 6 weeks with a broken ankle. That's a huge loss for them. Linebacker was a question mark. They felt good about Chris Thompson Jr. and Ray Coney, who's coming over from the FCS. But beyond that, it was a lot of questions. And now they're going to lose Chris Thompson Jr. for a minimum of 6 weeks. And that's going to be a big blow for that Tulsa defense. Speaking of big blows, this is not an injury related, but a suspension. And it's a pretty big blow too. And that's Utah State safety Ike Larson has been suspended for 6 weeks. That news broke Friday. We recorded the Utah State worker bee episode on Thursday. So kind of, not great timing. Ike Larson, all conference potential safety there for Utah State. Big blow for that defense, not having him for the first 6 weeks, but hopefully whatever is going on with him that caused the suspension, he can kind of get that corrected, get back in the good graces of the coaching staff and Bronco Mendenhall there, and get back on the field and make an impact for the Aggies here in 2025.
And the key wording in there is, I don't have their schedule up in front of me, but it's suspended 6 weeks. It doesn't say 6 games, just says 6 weeks. Now, does 6 weeks start week 0? I don't know. I don't know how that works.
It could start this week, right? And so,
yeah,
he's in that case. In theory, he would only miss, I guess, 4 games, right? Because there's 2 weeks before the season, so he'd only miss 4 games potentially. But yeah,
I think that's an interesting wording. So something to keep our eyes on. It definitely doesn't say 4. It doesn't say 6 games, but it says 6 weeks.
All right. It's depth chart season, if you will. We've already seen some depth charts come out for Hawaii. There was not, when I looked at the Hawaii one for the Hawaii Stanford game, I didn't see anything that kind of like shocked me or stood out to me. I didn't think to check the other G5s that have week 0 to see if their depth charts are out, but I'm sure they are. But nonetheless, we're starting to get some news in terms of who wins battles in some of these tightly contested spots here in the G5. All the ones we're going to talk about right now or tonight are quarterbacks. Those seem to get the most press, and folks are retweeting and all over Twitter and shouting their praises and etc. But we'll start with San Diego State, and that's Jaden Denegal was named the starter over Burt Emanuel Jr. I think if you watched our Worker Bee series with JR and on San Diego State, I think this one shouldn't come as a surprise. I think
Ben Fletcher and JR.
Ben Fletcher and JR, they both pretty bluntly said, "Hey, we expect Jaden Denegal to be the starter, but there will be packages for Burt Emanuel Jr. He's too athletic, too dynamic to not have packages." And so, I think it played out just as they predicted, right? Denegal is going to be the starter, but there will be packages for Burt Emanuel Jr. to kind of get his athleticism on the field. The next is Memphis officially announced Brendan Lewis as their starting quarterback. I don't think that one comes as a surprise. He was in a battle with Arrington Maiden and four-star recruit, true freshman Antoine A.J. Hill. Brendan Lewis brought in. He's a senior. Again, not shocked that he won that job. Kennesaw State announced that Dexter Williams II will be their starter. Again, that should not be a shock to anyone. If you watched our Kennesaw State episode, it is pretty clear that Dexter Williams was going to be the starting quarterback for the Owls here in 2025 and their run and hoot offense. So they look to air things out there at Kennesaw State here in 2025. This next one, a little bit of a surprise. And that's UMass. Brandon Rose was named the starter over Yale transfer Grant Jordan. And I think that one just comes a little bit of surprise just because in the spring, Grant Jordan played really well. Rose was not. I can't remember if Rose either wasn't there in the spring or he was still recovering from injury and didn't really participate. But nonetheless, coming out of spring, Grant Jordan, the Yale transfer, was the favorite. So that one, I guess it's a mild surprise because Brandon Rose followed the OC over from Utah to UMass. So there's definitely some familiarity there. But I think folks were, thought that Grant Jordan might win that job just based on what we saw in the spring. Next, New Mexico, the Lobos. This one isn't a surprise in terms of, who won the job. I think the surprise is that, or maybe a mild surprise is, hey, he wasn't healthy in the spring. He's been practicing. He looks healthy here in the fall, and that's Jack Lane, who followed his head coach over from Idaho. He's been officially named the starting quarterback for the Lobos in 2025. Rice Owls, again, if you watched our Worker Bee series, this should come as no surprise. Matt Bartlett over the Roost said that, hey, he expects Chase Jenkins to kind of be the starter there for Rice Owls, given the change in offense and the athleticism that Chase Jenkins brings to the table. He's a dual threat quarterback, and that's going to, pay dividends there in that Rice triple option offense. And then today, the big one, the really, really big one, I think, that most people were buzzing about. It didn't go, I think, as the majority of folks expected. Both Luke and myself were very much on the train in terms of who won, who we thought would win the job, did win the job, and that is Drew Mestamaker. I believe our friend Eric Froton calls him Drew Moneymaker. I, again, being a Christmas guy and some old, old Christmas movies, I call him Burgermeister Meisterburger. Drew Mestamaker was announced the starting quarterback for the North Texas Mean Green, and it's an incredible story. We've talked about it numerous times. Never. Until the bowl game, he had not started a game at quarterback since his freshman year in high school, and that was with the junior varsity team. He was a walk-on at North Texas, a walk-on safety at that. Played well enough to become the backup a year ago, earned the right to start the bowl game there against Texas State in the first responder bowl, and he played lights out. I mean, he had like 400 yards passing, another 60 or 80 yards on the ground, 3 or 4 touchdowns. Played an amazing bowl game. North Texas brought in Reese Poffenbarger, formerly of Old Dominion, formerly of Albany, formerly of Miami, to kind of compete for that job. I think most fans or most people expected that he would win the job, but he didn't. And so Drew Mestermaker will lead that high-powered North Texas Mean Green offense. And then the last piece of news, just kind of keeping folks up to date on Temple. It has still not been decided, but Giovanni McCoy, the transfer from Oregon State, and Evan Simon split reps with the first team at practice today, Monday, August 18th. So maybe next week this time we will have an update for you in terms of if a starter has been named. And that's going to do it for news and notes for this week.
Before we get too far, I want to go back to the North Texas. I want to go back to Drew Mestermaker because I want to just talk about something in general with the G5 reporting. So, like you said, big news. Pete Thamel broke the news. You know what? I just don't get it. Like, Brett Vito does a great job covering North Texas sports. He's there all the time. Pete Thamel's not at North Texas. Why does he get to break the news and not the guys that are there all the time? I think it's a real. I don't know if we got to blur.
It's a disservice.
Yeah, like what are we doing? The guys there all the time. I know that the practice was not open to the media and this stuff, and then he's going to break this news. I think it's a bad taste, just in general. It's not just North Texas. It's all over the G5.
Everywhere.
It's like you got big news. It goes to to this source or that source. I'm just not a fan. G5, do better. That's it.
And I think the problem is, that it's not quote like the people. I mean, it's obviously someone in the school or something that's leaking the news, but I seriously doubt it's like the SID or the director of communications that's leaking that news. It's somebody else. I would like to think that if it was someone more official, they would certainly provide that to the guy that's busting his butt at practice, at media days, etc., and covering the team on a daily basis. That they would kind of give the nod to that guy. It's always Pete Thamel's source is, he doesn't release a source, but I have no doubt it's always, quote, an anonymous source. And so it's somebody within the program. We don't really know who. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I don't know, maybe the programs should kind of get ahead of this. And in terms of like, hey, it's going to get leaked out at some point anyway. Like, let us control it by giving it to the guy that's, covering our team on a weekly basis, busting his butt out here at practice, all those sort of things, versus giving it to Pete Thamel. But yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100,000%.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If on X, give us a follow. And if you're listening to us on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. We are so grateful for the immense amount of support we have received, and we sincerely thank each and every one of you. Be sure to join us next week as we discuss what happened in Week 0. We look forward to the full slate of G5 games for Week 1 of the 2025 season, and as always, bring you up to date on all the latest news and happenings in the world of G5 college football. But until then, we are the G5 Hive.
Let's